Welcome back to Rich Words Music. What's better? Single coils, P90s, mini humbuckers, or full fat humbuckers? That's a question that we're going to answer very unscientifically today when I compare the pickups and the sounds in my single coil equipped Fender Telecaster, my Epiphone SG Classic with P90s, this Tonfuchs Dyna with Lola mini humbuckers, and my trusty old Epiphone Les Paul Traditional Pro, which is fitted with full fat Epiphone humbuckers. Let's do it. Okay, so there's nothing scientific about this video in any way. I do have to say that these four guitars are of course very different, and there are things other than the pickups that will make a difference in sound. But what I've done today is make sure that I play the four different guitars in a variety of situations through the same amp. It's always going to be my Hughes & Kettner Black Spirit 200 head, and I'm going to be going through the Redbox DI straight into my audio interface and Logic Pro on the computer there, and I've got a Greer Lightspeed overdrive for certain points of the video. We'll go on the clean channel of the amp, we'll boost that a little bit with the Greer Lightspeed, and we'll use the crunch and lead channels on the amp as well for some heavier sort of stuff. The settings that I've got the amp on are kind of one size fits all, so they're good for many different sounds, but you might notice that some of the guitars don't sound as good as they might otherwise normally do. For example, I can tell you before I even start doing this that the telly is probably going to sound a little bit weedy on the clean channel because I would run it a little bit hotter straight into the amp normally, but I'm not doing that because I want sounds that will generally sound good enough with all four of these guitars without doing too much to them. I guess the other thing that I have to point out is that the Telecaster does have technically a humbucker in the neck. It's a creamery wide range humbucker, but it's splittable and it is an authentic telly neck sound to me. And I guess the other thing is that besides the fact that all the different body woods and all the hardware appointments and everything else will make these guitars sound different, we also have to have a little comment on the fact that even the pickups in this guitar, the Lolas alone, cost more than this guitar would at retail, I think. So I'm expecting that the Tonfuchs is going to handle itself pretty well in this very unscientific test, but I'm very excited to see how the others do. I hope you are as well, so let's get straight into the playing part. Well, that was fun. I've literally just finished recording the riffs with the 4 different guitars, and what I thought I would do is shoot 2 different conclusions to this video. So I'll give you my direct opinions now, and what I will do is edit the riffs together so it's easier for you guys to directly hear the sounds between the guitars, and I will give you feedback based on that once I've done the edit. So that'll be cut to after I've finished this little bit. So my thoughts straight away were kind of what I expected going in. I'd set the amp to be a little bit weedier than normal, and as a consequence I think the telly sounded weedier than it normally would. Normally I would have this into a slightly more cooking amp, but I didn't want it to be that cooking because I've got the Epiphone here with really high output humbuckers. I thought that the Epiphone sounded really good on the clean channel. I was surprised how nice it sounded on the middle pickup selector with the ringing arpeggios that I did. And once we got up to the higher gain stuff, I started to feel like it was getting a little bit less defined, the tones. I felt like it was not really doing the chordal stuff that well, and I felt like it was not chugging that tightly or anything. I mean, that could be also down to how I set the amp on those channels. It could also be down to how I play the guitar, of course. That's another elephant in the room here, but we'll get onto that in another video, I think. Now, the other 2 guitars that are not on my knee right now, we've got the Tonfuchs Dyna, of course, which I felt handled everything expertly, as it should, for the price and based on the specs and everything. Those Lola mini humbuckers are really a new discovery for me. I really, really love them, and they sounded great in my ears just then. Interestingly, if you're interested, I should say, in a review, a full-on test of that Tonfuchs Dyna guitar, click the link in my little cards there, or just check it out on my channel. There's a whole 35 minutes of joy with that guitar for you to enjoy as well. Yeah, and I guess the dark horse of this 4-way test is the Epiphone Classic SG. I was a little bit worried about those P90s. I recently acquired that guitar from eBay Marketplace for a bargain price, by the way, and I expected not too much from the pickups themselves. Based on what I've read online, what I've heard in other reviews and stuff like that, I thought they might be a little bit bland. But so far for the clean stuff, they sounded nice and thick, especially compared to the single coils here. And for the higher gain stuff, they felt like they were holding together pretty well. They were not too noisy, and everything was well defined and tight. And there was a nice mid-range coming through, as you would expect from P90s too. So I'm really excited to hear them in my good headphones when I edit the stuff together. Okay, so we're going to cut back to that in a second, and let's hear my thoughts based on what you've also heard as well. Right then, so we're back in the room, and I first have to say that that took an awful lot longer than I thought it would. In total there's about 30 riffs on each of the guitars, and that means 120 different riffs that I played in total, and I had to cut those all into almost very specific bits, so that took a few more hours than it possibly should have done. But it was a lot of fun, and I did it for you, I did it for us, to document this for humanity, the difference in sound between these guitars. So I hope you enjoyed it. And the next thing that I have to say is that I was misinformed with my opinions about the single coils sounding weedy. And I know why that is now, and that is because for the last few months I have almost exclusively been using the headphones out on the Black Spirit 200 head. And I have to say that when playing back the sounds on the Mac, on my decent headphones, on the editing software, it did not sound like what I've been hearing these past few months. I've since plugged my cabs back in at home and played the amp through that, and what I heard through the cabs was much more like what I heard on the video here and what you guys have heard. So the Hughes & Kettner headphones out on the Black Spirit 200, it's a great thing for home practice and stuff, but don't let it get you thinking that that is exactly how you will sound if you go through the Redbox DI into a PA or anything like that for a future gig, because it is not. So negative points there for the Black Spirit 200, I guess. Not a problem though in total, because now we know what everything sounds like and we can move on. Okay, so that point about the Tele sounding thin before is unfounded. I mean, that guitar, that specific Mexican Fender Telecaster, has been my favourite for 6-7 years now, since when I got it, basically, and it kind of proved it again here. I've always thought that it didn't sound thin for a Tele, and actually it doesn't. It's just the way it sounded through the headphones out on the amp. The guitar sounded a lot thicker than I thought. I mean, in a direct A-B comparison with the Humbuckers, for example, sure, it sounds thin, but it cuts through so well, and it did have a bit of oomph to it, even on the clean channels, which I think you've heard. So, great marks for the Tele there. It handled everything really well, and it was super crisp and clear on the high gain stuff as well. Teles can really do high gain, they can do everything, so that's, yeah, plus point for a Tele. Moving on to the P90 equipped Epiphone Classic, the 2020 model, in worn Inverness Green. I was a little bit worried about how those P90s would handle the different riffs, because I've always thought that Epiphone pickups are kind of jack of all trades, masters of none, in that they can kind of do everything, but they don't do anything amazingly. And that's not strictly true, because I actually thought that everything from clean to mean, to use the boring old cliche, sounded great with that guitar. I was really impressed with it, and I didn't hear loads of buzz like I was expecting to. Again, noise gate on the amp on the high gain settings, which you might have to contend with if you're using P90s, of course, but it sounded really nice and thick on the cleaner stuff. It sounded good on the classic rock. I thought that the neck pickup wasn't quite as cutting as it could have been, really. It was kind of a little bit muddy, not that clear, but apart from that, good marks for the Epiphone too. Moving on to the Lollas in the Tonfuchs Dyna guitar, and of course that guitar treated itself amazingly throughout the whole test. And I mean, you know, it costs 10 times more than any of the others in the test here, so it should have done, shouldn't it? But it sounded great from everything from cleans through to classic rocks, through to alternative rocks, the pop punk stuff, and even the hardcore punk metal impersonations that I did. It managed to do everything just about fine. I mean, those Lolla humbuckers, as I said before, probably cost more than the Epiphone SG in total, probably cost about as much as the Mexican Tele did back in the day, and so you would expect that from this guitar, actually, wouldn't you? I wouldn't say that that guitar could play the heaviest of heavy metal, but everything else it absolutely excels at, so great choice if you've got a spare $5,000 lying around. And moving on finally to the Epiphone Les Paul Traditional Pro, that's my 2014 model. That has the hot Epiphone humbuckers, and I think that's a great guitar. It plays beyond what it cost, in my opinion. I have had some work done on it. It's got a bone nut on it, it's been set up by a pro and that kind of stuff. But those humbuckers, they're surprisingly fat for clean stuff, and I really enjoyed them. Once we got through to the higher gain stuff though, with those humbuckers, I was starting to think it's not holding up as clearly as it should be, maybe. I mean, it sounds alright, but for me it's perhaps just not quite as tight as I would want it to be for that kind of stuff. So overall then, good marks for that as well, but in the heavy part, where I expected it to excel over some of the others, it fell down a little bit there. Overall then, I guess another point that I have to make is that often when we think of single coil pickups versus humbucking pickups, we think of single coils as being amazing for clean sounds, for country, for blues, for indie and rock and jazz and stuff like that. And we think about humbuckers in general for heavier styles, especially when we're talking about modern music, heavy metal, hard rock, that kind of stuff. I mean, humbuckers have traditionally also been used for jazz and other genres like that, but most guys these days will use single coils for cleans and humbuckers for heavier stuff. But I have to say that I kind of found the opposite to be a little bit true in this test. I found the Telecaster and the P90s were amazing on the cleans, but I was really pleasantly surprised by the mini humbuckers and the humbuckers too. They sounded super thick. In particular, the one I talked about earlier, the clean picked arpeggio chords that I did with the middle position on the Epiphone Les Paul. That sounds super fat, it sounds lovely. I really, really like that sound. And then by contrast, when we got to the heavier stuff, I really dug the clarity of the Telecaster and the P90s over the full fat humbuckers of the Epiphone Les Paul. So that's my thoughts on this video. I'd really like to hear what you guys thought about it and which pickups you thought handled the situations the best. So please leave those thoughts in the comments. As a final point, I would have to say, if I were to choose one of these guitars to be my single guitar for a specific gig or for a specific show or something like that in the future, if I had to choose just one, it would be quite difficult. In my mind, all four of those pickups offer their own unique, specific advantages. But at the end of the day, I've had to give the Tonfuchs back already. I don't own that one, obviously. And so if I might have chosen that, I can't anymore. So I will have to say I'm going back to my original squeeze, the 2014 or 13 standard Mexican Telecaster FSR special run, which has just been an absolute beast for me from then on in, remains to be to this day. It's got the standard Fender single coil in the bridge and a creamery splittable wide range humbucker in the neck, and that does just about everything I could ever need it to do because I don't play super heavy stuff, as you will have noticed if you've seen me trying to play it in the videos up to this point. Again, let me know which of the four guitars was your favourite. There are going to be reviews of all of the guitars on this channel. The Tonfuchs is already up as of this video being shot. Links up there or down there as well, so please go and watch that if you will, and there are videos coming about all the rest. Many more spurious guitar-based videos coming from me. I'm really enjoying having this Rich Words music channel, so please subscribe and like the video, leave a comment if you can, that would really make my day, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Bye for now.